Hey everybody, great news! Well, we beat Medicare! Just kidding. This is kind of like this is something that is going to turn into a meme for a couple of weeks. And additionally, if you notice, I am trying something in this while recording. For one, you might not see it, but my tripod using my iPhone recording this, I decided to lift it a little bit higher, although it kind of feels kind of like odd seeing it, you know, kind of looking at it, having like a long neck, just testing waters. And also, I got this pad here in which I'm testing it at the moment. Actually, I got it a few months ago, but it was recently that I am using it a lot more just to test it out, especially since, well, my computer, I think I did said in one of my videos that my computer kind of acted up, that it started kind of like restarting, and then it had a moment where the Windows got corrupted because of it, and then I couldn't get in. And after many shenanigans, I did recover my stuff. I did recover my computer usage, and for now it's running fine. But I'm a little bit kind of like in observation mode in case it happens again. So I'm not trying to overuse it as much. So this is gonna last until I gain a little bit more confidence of what is happening. But still, in the meantime, that doesn't stop me from, you know, still watching the current movies that are happening. And by the way, I do go to the movie theaters because I still support the art of that, even though some movies are, well, good or some are bad and all this stuff. This year wasn't exactly that good. And speaking of which, today I had kind of a little bit of a coin toss. For one, I wanted to watch, well, Horizon, the American Saga, but I like westerns. I wanted to support Kevin Costner, although I've been hearing some kind of mixed feelings about this movie. But the biggest thing that intimidated about this movie is that Horizon is gonna have 4 parts, and that was only the first part. And it was a 3-hour movie. A 3-hour movie is kind of like a chore with me nowadays. Maybe it's because I'm getting older and I don't have kind of like the exact stamina. Maybe I'll give it a try if I do it, because, well, that's a part of that kind of made me not short, or some other aspect that I don't want to talk about. So this is why I decided to go with A Quiet Place Day 1, which is the sequel of the A Quiet Place movies. And I will say that, well, I did review the other movies, and there's some things that I didn't forget, but I will say that A Quiet Place I always found kind of like a missed opportunity to make a movie that is totally silent, and it's just all atmospheric and everything. The first movie almost had it, but then they started talking. When the character starts talking, this is where I, well, for lack of better words, I kind of lack the I kind of lost a little bit the respect the movie that it was going through, because they missed the opportunity to have, you know, making a movie that it was totally silent. Well, I think they made one last year. What was it, Silent Night? But I heard that this movie is totally speechless, but I never saw it, so I don't know what to say. But although, don't get me wrong, I did come out, you know, liking the movie fair. And I like, you know, the concept about a world infested by monsters that are sensitive to hearing. They're blind, and the world technically has to survive by keeping quiet. They have to adapt to a new culture where you do anything you can to not make a sound, or else these creatures which are strong and fast, they're gonna kill you. So that still kind of is interesting. And now we got day one, the one that came out right now, which basically is gonna act. That's like this prequel of all the other two movies. Even though we saw a glimpse of the origin of those monsters in the second movie. This one they decided to dedicate, in which, to its credit, it is a bit of kind of like a breath of fresh air, that we're gonna concentrate on other characters and not well the same cast, almost the same cast that we got in the last movie. This one is more and honestly, I like something when movies kind of do that. We especially on horror, where we concentrate on different people, that they're gonna get kind of like a different they kind of like the same experience, but they have kind of like different approaches. This is something kind of like a pet peeve that I like for those movies. Even though I was a little bit kind of like raising my eyebrows that is this gonna be as good as the other ones. But anyway, I finally went there. At least I will say that I was actually glad that we're gonna get a sequel to Smile on the next couple of months. I really like that one, and I like the concept of that. So that one put me a big smile. As for A Quiet Place Day 1, if I had to compare to the other movies, I think I like this one kind of a bit better, I must admit. I like this one a little bit better. I kind of want to make this movie stand on its own, considering that considering on the way how the timeline goes. There's a little bit of holes in it, considering that it has kind of like a different director. But you know what? I did like this movie. I did like Quiet Place Day 1. This is a movie that it came out with certain emotions that I didn't saw it coming. And I'll get to that when it goes through. But at the end of the day, while this movie is basically a prequel, it doesn't do anything kind of like major to groundbreak anything, like saying that this is the greatest movie ever. It kind of doesn't do that, but it does play the cards right. It does the cinematography right. The acting, it does a lot of things right, and it does manage to surprisingly put certain emotions that I didn't see it coming, and it actually touched me personally in some aspect. Even though I'm aware this movie has some flaws. I'm not gonna. I never like to overhype anything, and I do agree that this movie has certain flaws. But nevertheless, I was satisfied. I got satisfied with this with this one. So let's get started. So like I said, this movie's a prequel of the other two movies. Although it can also serve a little bit as a standalone, considering that it concentrates with another set of characters. In this case, we center on this woman named Sam. She's played by Lupita Nyong. You know her as one of the characters, the Black Panther franchise. she plays this terminally ill woman who she lives in what was it, what was it, a rehab house or something like that. She's a little bit callous, let's say. She's kind of like, she's into poem, but she's kind of like depressed, and she doesn't like to talk much with people. She's also a little bit kind of like having this kind of like awkward relationship with the nurse, that the nurse has kind of like this super professional kind of, well, I wouldn't say professional, I will say like kind of like this cold relationship. So basically she's a woman who is kind of enduring a terminal illness, and the only comfort that she has is that she during the whole movie she is with a cat. That cat is played by two cats, by the way. I saw it in the credits, so I'm glad that they. I like it when movies they acknowledge animals as as actors. In this case, there's a cat. The cat's name is Frodo. Yeah, like Lord of the Rings. So basically the whole premise starts when she and her other group of people, they go to this kind of like this marionette theater to see something, but she doesn't have any from it. She's actually more fixated to go to a certain part of New York and get pizza. But unfortunately, well, the nurse, she kind of doesn't comply. So while on their way home, that's when the asteroids fall from the sky, and you know that these asteroids is where these creatures come from, and basically that's what happened. These creatures come, invade, in this case, New York. It kills a lot of people. People are in a panic for a while, and that is until then they kind of become aware that these creatures are sensitive to hearing. You make one false move, and they'll target you. And unfortunately, the military, to make matters worse, they destroy all the bridges, so the creatures won't go over the mainland, considering that the creatures, they also hate water. So basically the plot set in which they did set a kind of like a place that they must go in order to be picked up by a ferry, so before the creature get there. But in the case of our protagonist and the cat, actually she has something else in mind. Her mission is to get pizza. I know that sounds kind of like ridiculous, but almost the whole movie, the biggest thing that this woman says is that she wants to get pizza, even in the midst of all that disaster. And yeah, it is as comical as the guy from Zombieland, who the whole movie, his biggest goal is to get a Twinkie. This woman's biggest quest is to get pizza on that place. But honestly, as funny as this sounds, there is kind of like a bigger motive for that, and you get there when you get there. So basically the movie kind of follows this whole plot, having going to a point A to point B scenario while avoiding certain obstacles that happen. But of course, while on her quest with her and the cat, they also during the middle of the movie, she also encountered a man named Eric. He's played by Joseph Quinn, who basically is a man who wants to survive, and they kind of form at first kind of like an awkward relationship, but then it kind of builds kind of like a chemistry that it doesn't necessarily have to be it's not romantic, by the way, but it really forms kind of like something special that in which they're both trying to survive, but also coming to terms about the situation. And in the case of our main character, her mortality. But basically, that's the synopsis of the movie. Sorry if I went too long, but this is kind of like the whole thing that I went through. I think it's time for me to grade the acting, in which I gotta admit that this is probably one of Lupita Nyong'o's best performances. She does have better performances, although not degrading, her contribution on the Black Panther movies. But she did really good in this one, and she did show in both, the strength to, go for a goal, but at the same time, the vulnerabilities of someone suffering a cancer. I think it was, I can say that it's cancer, considering her, the kind that she has to go through the medication, and she doesn't have hair, probably by the chemo. But you can tell that she also goes through a character of, being kind of like distant to people, and then when she meets the Joseph Quinn character, she kind of grows up into a character that she can care for other people, and because some people they can legitimately care for you later. That's a little bit, going up front from what it is. I'm just kind of like rambling from my memory. But either way, she did an excellent job on this one. And it also works out, with the chemistry with Joseph Quinn, because once he gets there, it kind of forms kind of like a relationship that Joseph Quinn could easily be a character that could have been played by a child, in which these kind of movies in which they're kind of like a distant character, and then she meets someone younger, and then that young guy kind of like that young child, kind of follows that character. They were like, hey, don't follow me, and all that stuff. So it could have been easily being kind of a child character, but luckily they didn't go there, and I'm glad that they used a more adult character. And he doesn't act like a child or overly cowardly that you're gonna dislike. It's a man that you find that it is understandable that like anyone, he's afraid. Everyone is afraid. Everyone is in the same boat that they have to keep quiet or the monsters will get them. And this guy is afraid, and it kind of more makes it kind of like a relationship between a healthy person and a sick person, trying to help each other. And the guy doesn't want to be alone when everything happens, so this is why he clinges to the Lupita Nyong'o characters, to him. And then kind of like unexpectedly they begin to tolerate and compensate each other. But the funny thing also is that the glue that actually bring those two characters together is the cat. I don't want to be jokey on that one, but that cat is probably the best actor in the movie. But I'm just saying this because I love cats. Cats are I have a fancy for cats. I'm glad that and honestly, while I love this cat, there are some things about this cat that makes you your eyes go like, and then you ask, is this how a cat acts? But you know what? In the world of Hollywood, where they overly humanize dogs, and they even make dogs, act like they shouldn't in real life. Well, why not a cat? Let's make a cat do that too. Because the way they treat this cat is that the Lupita character, she brings this cat everywhere. It even has kind of like a cat collar, a cat leash to walk with it. In which, don't get me wrong, they're not common, but they can be used. There's cat leashes, to take your cat to walk. But then when the disaster happens, of course it's understandable that the cat, goes into hiding or something like that. I mean, I can understand. It's a cat. They have to go through their instinct, and even though they forget their owners as well, is that they have to be self-independent. But there are times in which this cat, I mean, the cat kind of is sometimes a little bit too calm, because animals like cat, what they are overly reactive. When a big noise happens, they can easily panic and they can go put their claws. But this cat, it can get kind of like weirdly calm, and this is very unusual for cat behavior. So much that this movie has 2 occasions in which the cat had to go through water. And you know what? No cat will go through like that. That cat will actually panic on water. This is so it kind of becomes kind of like weird. The behavioral choices of this cat. Although, in a way, I was kind of like totally fine, because they do exaggerate the same thing with dogs as in this case. But still, the way this cat behaves is a little bit too convenient for the movie. Although I'm not trying to diss it out, because in the other aspect, this cat is, how can I say, it's really cute. It serves, as the link that unites both the Lupita Nyong'o and Joseph Quinn character. So it served that purpose. So I cannot say, I can't be harsh on that cat. And honestly, you know what? The funny thing is that with a string of people dying by these monsters, I was actually rooting more the cat to survive than the humans. That's how much I care for that cat. Oh God. Okay, what else do I have to say more? Cinematography. There's no point saying, that, to say that, yeah, this movie is good looking, is obvious. The monsters, they look terrifying enough. Although, well, it's kind of like a bit of an overused, how could I say? It's kind of like a bit of an overused design for these kind of monsters. Fleshy, looking a little bit like Cloverfield monsters. They have no eyes. They kind of look a little bit like the Lickers from Resident Evil 2. Except that they don't have the long tongues. That's the best way I can describe these creatures. As for tone and for considering it is a scary movie, it plays its card well. Although it does keep, using the same gimmick that for the most of the movie, there is very little dialogue. And when opportunity comes, this is where dialogue comes. I already have, how to say, my, the missed opportunities that A Quiet Place had. I'm not gonna go through with that again. It still has that. Although in ways, it does work a little bit kind of like a thriller. It's not gonna go. It's not. This movie doesn't treat itself so much as a scary movie, but more kind of like a thrilling movie. Because the chase scenes kind of makes it a little bit too actiony. Although there is parts that it does feel that, oh my god, it makes you feel like, tense, because this is where the movie scare factor is actually effective, where there are moments in which, they have to keep quiet, they go through with it, but then, like usual, because this movie usually has to happen, something wrong happens by accident, and that kind of turns into a big accident, and well, the monsters attack. In which, honestly, I prefer that over jump scares. Even though this movie, I think it has kind of like one or two moments that are jump scary. One of them comes a little bit right in your face. Even though, because the movie doesn't abuse it, you gotta give it credit that it felt earned. It did felt earned for what it got. So that's technically I have to say about this. Music, I can't say much because there's not much about it. I think I already speak most of the things that I wanted to talk on the analytical level. But I do also have to say that, well, like I said, thematically, this movie kind of feels a little bit weird, in which the whole goal of 90% of the movie is about a character who wants pizza. And in my head during the whole movie, it was kind of like here we go into the quest to find pizza. And now that I think about it, it's almost like a quest that Michelangelo from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle will go through. But I digress. But once we get, to that moment in which, I'm not gonna spoil too much, but I will say the unexpected emotion that it got me. That part, it gets really emotive. This is where it felt like this is where the movie kind of gains to have some kind of heart, considering how the characters began to act. They began to bond on that place. They began to, feel, interact and having their own, kind of like their own shrine of peace and comfort. And weirdly enough, it kind of felt like a Pixar movie. Weirdly enough, yeah. Honestly, for those few moments, I felt more emotions than the whole, than the ones that I had from Inside Out 2. Because, well, let's say that the protagonist and these characters, they have bigger and real problems than Riley. Okay, I'm not trying to diss that character, but seriously, the whole that whole moment, it becomes really emotive, which this is what it made the climax. Not gonna say much about it, but it felt kind of like bittersweet. It's bittersweet, it's sad, but it hits you. Especially if you get invested with these characters, the whole thing, it hits you. And yes, I did kind of joke that this whole movie is just a quest to get pizza. It later shows that it's much more than that. And I'm not gonna go through much into it, but because I don't want to spoil it. But man, that moment, it just those few moments kind of gave me a little bit more respect to this movie. It's not exactly the greatest movie, but you know what? Sometimes just a moment is enough, you know, to raise a little bit the bar that I had with this movie. But you know what? But still, it is a good monster movie that it plays the cards right. It did well enough on both the thrill, the action. It has a little bit of heart into it, and well, it works. That made it enough for me to say that personally, I prefer this movie a little bit more than the other two, considering some of the elements, and of course, the cat. So yeah, a Quiet Place. Check it out. So well, that's all I have to say. So if you excuse me, I think I'm gonna get some pizza.